Hi again then guys, and welcome to another car review from the world of Project Cars 2, and of course recently, on a slight tangent, we had our first official trailer for Project Cars 3, and yes, I do plan to look into doing that on the channel as well. Now as far as this vehicle goes, I wanted to cover this one very early on in this review series, because it's one of the ultimate unicorn cars of this game. It's one of the most unique supercars ever built, and crucially, it's actually one of the fastest cars that most people have never heard of, the TWR XJ220 S. Now this is a car which I've always loved ever since I first saw it. It's such a special vehicle, and the story behind it and behind the company who helped develop it is such a fascinating one, because what you've got here is a supercar with a very patchy development history initially from Jaguar, the XJ220. Initially supposed to have a V12 with all-wheel drive. It ended up having, of course, the legendary Group B Metro engine, the twin-turbo 6R4 unit, 3.5 litre V6, way before Ford did that, with the new GT of course, and it is an amazing car, because the XJ220 is commonly thought of as being just a fast straight line machine. It was the fastest car in the world for about 5 minutes, but in racing it was formidable as well, at least when TWR was involved. Because, for those who don't know, TWR, who are incidentally a brand that I've talked about recently on the channel as well in Unsung Heroes with their incredible version of the Aston Martin DB7, they are a company, Tom Walkinshaw Racing, who have some pretty impressive victories, developments and vehicles under their belt. In fact, they helped to develop the Nissan R390, a legendary race car from a number of games, probably most notably Gran Turismo, and of course they helped Jaguar themselves to develop a Le Mans winning XJ220. A bright yellow race car, which did win Le Mans. You're probably thinking, wait a second, I've never heard of an XJ220 winning Le Mans. When exactly was this? Well, unfortunately, it won and was then disqualified because its fuel tank was too large. The fact remains, though, they built a vehicle that won the race, and that's about more than just fuel economy. Lasting that long, being fast enough to win, it really is a testament not just to Jaguar, but to TWR as well. So in a surprisingly literal sense, you can really think of this car, the XJ220S, as being, in effect, a GT1 homologation special. That's kind of what this car represents. They took that racing technology and experience, combined it with an already brilliant supercar platform in the form of the XJ220, and made this one of the absolute fastest supercars of the 90s. Take an XJ220, give it a gorgeous chin splitter, big Ferrari-style rear wing, BBS rims, strip out, I believe, something like 250 kilos out of its weight, which is a huge difference, still manual, still rear-wheel drive, up the power from, 542 I believe on a standard XJ. In the case of this one, 680 horses. That's serious territory even by today's standards. That's on par with the Zonda Cinque. And what were the results? Well, the results were incredible. 0 to 60, about 3.3 seconds, and the top speed is in the region of 225 miles an hour, or according to this game's specs, 228. As I said, one of the quickest cars that most people aren't aware of. The regular XJ220 was already fast. This really does turn it up to 11. Now, crucially, the problem with this car is actually something which I believe you cannot change, and that is its inherent size. The XJ220 is a massive car. It's long, it's wide, in real life it's impractically low, and apparently according to Martin Brundle, who let's just say has a lot of experience with the car, including its speed record, said that the windscreen is so angled that it's actually difficult to drive it on the street because the visibility isn't exactly great on the car. But it's through corners that this vehicle begins to have issues, because in real life I'm sure the difference between this and a regular XJ220 is probably night and day. This is essentially like a street legal race car in comparison to that one. In this game though, especially for instance if you're newer to the game or prefer to use a controller, as I do for instance, and in the case of this car it's completely untuned, which is how I like to do my reviews because that tells you what the vehicle is like straight out of the box, well, it's not great. And there's two reasons why, because it's not just about the handling. The acceleration is good, the power is strong, and technically, as I said, that top speed is very good, especially for a road category B vehicle. However, This is one of those cars which, due to the gearing, takes a very long time to get to 228. In fact, getting up to 200 isn't too difficult. That last 28 miles an hour takes a lot longer. So in reality, it's not exactly an advantage that you're going to use all that often. In terms of the handling, the issue, as I said just now, really is the size of the car. Because although the weight is pretty good, it only weighs 2,300 pounds, the problem is that when you take something that's as inherently huge as an XJ220 and try and pilot it around a tight corner, it just doesn't want to do that. If you think, for instance, of where the car had its success, well, two places. The road-going version had success on, an oval track, or somewhere where you can get top speed out of it. Any supercar can do that. And the racing version dominated at Le Mans, which is a huge track. There's tons of runoff, really big, high-speed, wide-open corners, which is what this car loves. You put this car on something like Monaco, well, the car does not want to drive there at all. It's so large, it's so cumbersome, and it actually feels strangely soft and kind of wallowy through corners, which really doesn't help. Plus, you've also got the inherent issue of a 90s twin-turbo monster, which in effect means that you put your foot down, and about 3 months later it actually accelerates because there's so much lag. Is it fast? Absolutely. However, it just doesn't feel fast by today's standards. In the 90s, this was an absolute monster, and on paper it still is, but it just doesn't translate compared to especially today's supercars and hypercars, even vehicles which are slower than this, technically. The Ford GT, for example, on paper it's not as impressive, and yet the Ford could run rings around this thing, and of course, there's, 2 decades of development between the two cars, but it really does show, and that's my point. This is a legendary unicorn supercar. It's an awesome vehicle. I would love to see one. I still never have. They hardly built any of them, and it is the most special XJ220, but it's just not good enough to really dominate the more modern machines. It's fast and it's good on wide open circuits, so if you do want to use this car, I would strongly recommend doing so on somewhere like La Sarthe, aka Le Mans, or for instance, Monza, maybe Laguna Seca, but even then, I really would recommend sticking to very wide open circuits, at least, again, without tuning the car. Now, with many vehicles, you can change them significantly. Tighten up the springs, lower the suspension, drop a bit of weight, change the tyres, of course, and I have no doubt they can make a difference. But straight out of the box, those are my thoughts on the TWR Jaguar. It's an incredible machine, and in real life I think it would be an awesome experience to drive, I have no doubt, but in the game it hasn't aged as well. In terms of the handling physics, top speed takes a while to get there. It's a very nice collector's piece, and it's certainly one of the most special cars in the game. Hardly any racing games actually have it. Project Gotham 4 did as well. It's a really cool car, and as I said, it is one of the quickest cars that most people haven't heard of, but it just doesn't really compete with the more modern machines, so if you're looking for the competitive edge, you might want to avoid the car. In a similar way though to the Turbine Lotus from last week, it's certainly worth driving just to feel this kind of epitome of the ultimate 90s supercar, what that was capable of, and then compare that to how it feels today, because they really are night and day. Overall though, it's an awesome car. Tell me your thoughts down below. Do you like the vehicle? Do you think I'm completely wrong about it? Do you agree? Either way, tell me down below, and until next time, I'll see you then. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.